Dale Jr. presses Denny Hamlin on charters, with Denny saying things have reached a boiling point with NASCAR. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. Hope you're doing well. We've got so much to get to. Some breaking news this afternoon. Eric Jones' name is no longer on the entry list for this weekend's race at Kansas. Instead, Corey Heim is expected to drive the 43. Eric Jones, of course, is still week to week after suffering a compression fracture at Talladega. Heim substituted for him at Dover. I thought did a pretty decent job. It now appears he will sub once again at Kansas. Wishing Eric Jones the best. Hope to see him back behind the wheel of a race car soon. Also want him to get back to 100% because back injuries can linger. And we've seen in the past when drivers return from a back injury, they don't always look like themselves for weeks, if not months. Want to see Eric Jones at 100% as soon as possible. Good luck to Corey Heim, assuming he is in fact driving the 43 this weekend. Next, Racer.com has confirmed that neither Trackhouse nor Colleague Racing will field a car for Shane Van Gisbergen at North Wilkesboro later this month. Because he won Chicago last summer, SVG is eligible for the All-Star race. But Trackhouse would have needed to enter a third car for their driver. Best guess is that with the All-Star race not paying particularly well, unless you win, Trackhouse Colleague likely didn't feel it was a worthwhile investment to get Shane on track there. Look, Shane Van Gisbergen's going to get plenty of seat time this year. He's running every single Xfinity Series race. He's already got 2 top 10s and a top 5 finish this year. He's 15th in points, just behind guys like Sam Mayer, Ryan Sieg, Brandon Jones, just ahead of guys like Brennan Poole, who's having a really good year. He's ahead of Parker Retzlaff in a Jordan Anderson car. He's ahead of Jeremy Clements, one of the stronger independent teams. Shane Van Gisbergen is doing well in Xfinity, and he's going to get more Cup Series starts later this season. Would it have been cool to see SVG in the All-Star race at North Wilkesboro? Yeah, but likely did not make financial sense for the teams. I get it. This is a very exciting time of the year. We've made it to the month of May. We're talking about All-Star Weekend at North Wilkesboro. We've talked about Kevin Harvick driving Kyle Larson's number 5 car in practice. After that, of course, you've got Memorial Day weekend with the Indianapolis 500, the Charlotte Coca-Cola 600, Kyle Larson attempting both races. Going to be a fantastic day with a lot of intrigue building up to that May 26th race date, right? May 26th, I believe that is that Sunday. Cannot wait. Now let's talk charters. This is going to be a follow-up to yesterday's video where we discussed that Athletic article. Denny Hamlin, co-owner of 2311 Racing, was on Dale Jr.'s Dale Jr. Download podcast yesterday, and he was very open about what was discussed in that article and reiterated many of the race team's demands.
Rick Hendrick, Joe Gibbs have invested in the sport for decades and decades and deserve to give their kids that permanent charter and it be something that is able to be passed down.
Let's pause right there real quick because we know at this point NASCAR CEO Jim France do not want to make charters permanent. That's frustrating, obviously, to Denny Hamlin and I'm sure many other race teams. I feel I understand the team's side of this argument really well. They want permanent charters because it protects their investment, grants them more influence, a larger seat at the table. I'm trying to understand NASCAR's side of this argument. Obviously, if the charters become permanent, NASCAR loses some of their power. That's one less thing they can hold over the teams to try and get them to fall in line. But I guess what I'm trying to understand is, what was the goal of charters when they were first created? On one hand, you'll hear NASCAR say, hey, look at the charters. They're going up in value. That's great. Look at all this investment in our sport. But then in the same breath, they'll turn to the teams and say, hey, yeah, no, we're not really interested in guaranteeing that investment. You just have to trust us. Just go along with what we're doing. I don't feel like that correlates. I don't know. Maybe the value of charters rose way more and more quickly than NASCAR ever expected. I don't know. I wasn't doing this show back when the charter system was first implemented. What was the chatter then? What was the goal of the charters? I feel like it was always guaranteed to end up something like this. Are they not doing exactly what everyone hoped they would do? Then why is there so much conflict? I don't know. How did we not see this coming? I guess that's what I'm trying to understand. Anyway, let me unpause this. Denny Hamlin then kind of went into the money side of these negotiations.
There's 3 stakeholders in this sport: the tracks, the teams, and NASCAR. And, to be quite honest, two of those stakeholders make 9-figure profits a year, and one stakeholder loses 7-figure profits per year. So I wish that the fans were more informed of how offset this deal is, and how unfair it is to the teams. But
those are strong comments from Denny Hamlin. But so much money in this sport is hidden from the public eye. So it's difficult to know for sure if the numbers he's suggesting there are indeed accurate. There was an interesting Forbes article last year that included a report from Global Data that suggested teams like Hendrick Motorsports, Joe Gibbs Racing, RCR brought in close to $100 million in sponsorship revenue in 2022. $100 million. Now that's just revenue. That's not including all the expenses. We don't know what their profits are. Hamlin says the teams are in the negative. They are not profiting. The two companies that own most of the racetracks on the schedule, ISC, which is now part of NASCAR, privately owned, SMI, they haven't been publicly traded at least for a few years from what I could find. But going back a few years, those companies raked in $500 million in revenue annually. Again, that's not profit. I don't know what their expenses look like, but they were making hundreds of millions a year in revenue. Denny Hamlin's talking about profit. I don't know if that's true. I imagine he's not crazy far off, but I can't confidently confirm one way or another if those numbers he's throwing around are accurate. For the sake of argument, let's take Hamlin's comments at face value. If both NASCAR and the tracks are raking in, as he says, over $100 million annually in profit, and the teams are losing over $1 million every single year, yeah, that's a problem. That is way out of balance. The teams absolutely should get a much larger split of this next TV contract, no doubt. The problem is that the teams would likely need to accept some sort of spending cap for NASCAR to go along with that proposal. And I'm not sure if 23XI Racing would be okay with that. I don't know. Maybe they would. I'd love to ask Denny Hamlin, honestly. Denny Hamlin then goes after Jim France once again.
There's a lot of different things that are key pillars, and this is kind of the first time I'm saying it publicly because I think we've reached a boiling point where it needs to be fixed. And certainly we're dealing with, certainly one individual that won't come out publicly and tell his story of why he won't give these things to the teams that have invested heavily in putting the show on each and every week.
This goes back to that first point. Jim France is quite literally cut from the same cloth as Big Bill France. The France family is often ruled with an iron fist. I feel Jim France is not much different. He wants to maintain as much power and influence as he possibly can. Like I said yesterday, I think Jim France is smartly going to race teams individually to gauge where they're at. He's further breaking up an already fragmented coalition of race teams. That's just part of why NASCAR has far more leverage than the race teams right now. I do wish Jim France would be more transparent. He doesn't have to be more transparent with you and me and the media, but at least with the teams. Going back to Hamlin's first point, a lot of these team owners have invested tens, hundreds of millions of dollars into this sport. The CEO of NASCAR shouldn't be snubbing their meetings. That's just how I feel, at least. Now, most everyone still believes a deal will get done before the end of this year, but if a deal doesn't get done by the end of December, Denny Hamlin points out that effectively that means charters would go away.
It would be ignorant of fans to say, well, that's great, no charters. Well, then we just wouldn't show up when we don't need to. The Clash, we won't show up at that. The All-Star race wouldn't show up at that. Maybe there's some races that pay less. We just won't show up to those. It's just not financially good. So I'm sure there'll be owners not like that. I'm saying this publicly, but I've reached the point of frustration that, it's boiling over.
I said this yesterday, and then I heard Dale Jr. kind of draw the same conclusion when I listened to his podcast. It almost seems like 23XI Racing is on an island by themselves. Based on Hamlin's comments right there, as well as quotes from the Athletic article we read yesterday, it sounds like there's a good number of race teams who would be willing to take the current deal NASCAR has offered them. But 23XI Racing, a newer team with an NBA background, realizes how big of an opportunity this is and is pushing for widespread industrial changes. I'm sure there are a few teams that are backing them, that are with them, that are supporting them, but what happens if at some point those teams sort of back off and suddenly 23XI truly is on an island on their own? I appreciate what they're trying to do, but what happens if all the other teams are ready to sign? Can one team hold this deal up? Like, how does this actually work within the race team alliance? Could one team bog down the whole process? I'm not sure. All I know is 23XI is doing by far the most talking. They've got the biggest ideas. They are pushing the hardest. They are the most outspoken. Doesn't matter if it's Curtis Polk, Denny Hamlin, does not matter. 23XI Racing is doing all the talking. How do all the other teams feel about that? Some clearly don't fully align with 23XI, while others maybe still do, but for how long? Hamlin says they've already reached a boiling point. Do other teams feel the same way? I still have many questions. I appreciate Denny's openness, sharing his opinion on this whole matter. Let me know what you think, your reaction down in the comment section below. Busy week, lots to react to, lots to break down and try and understand, and yet still so many questions remain. That's gonna do it for this episode, y'all. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more NASCAR news, reactions, rumors, race recaps, and so much more. And a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters. I will see you all again later this week. Have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday, folks. Thanks for watching.